Just as Julian, hidden in the shadows, held his breath fearing Emory had seen him, the door creaked open and in walked Nicky, calm and casual, as if the tension in the air didn't weigh a ton. "Oh." Emory turned quickly, startled. I didn't expect anyone to be here." Nicky offered a warm, easy smile. "Sorry about the noise, didn't mean to scare you. I wasn't expecting anyone here this late." He glanced subtly toward the direction where Julian was still hiding, then back at Emory, his expression completely relaxed. Emory exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, placing a hand on his chest. No, it's fine. I wanted to come by. I didn't think I'd get another chance." Nicky nodded gently, folding his hands behind his back. "It's a special place. Means a lot to people who knew the St. Clairs." "Yeah," Emory murmured, glancing back at the memorial. "They were important to me. Especially Richard, and Julian." There was a quiet pause between them before Emory turned back. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Nicky," he replied with a polite bow of his head. "I work for Julian Holstead. I oversee the estate on his behalf." "Julian Holstead?" Emory blinked, startled. "As in, the owner of this estate?" "Yes," Nicky confirmed. "He purchased the property a few years ago and insisted the memorial be restored and open to visitors." Emory looked stunned. "A Holstead? I didn't expect that." He fell quiet for a moment, his brows furrowing. "It's strange. The ship I came on was owned by the Holsteads, now the St. Clair's old home too. And Julian Holstead shares the same first name as Julian St. Clair. It's just, a lot of coincidences." Nicky's expression remained unreadable. "Life can be funny like that sometimes." Emory hesitated, then asked, "Would it be possible to meet him?" "Julian Holstead, I mean. I'd really love to thank him in person for preserving all this." Nicky's smile was apologetic. "I'm afraid that might be difficult right now. Mr. Holstead is currently away on a business trip, won't be back for a while." "Oh," Emory nodded slowly, disappointment clear in his voice. "That's a shame. I really wanted to tell him how grateful I am. It means a lot." "I can pass along your message," Nicky offered. "Or better yet, when he returns, I'll let him know you'd like to see him. He's a private man, but I think he'd appreciate your sincerity." "Thank you," Emory said sincerely. "Let me walk you out," Nicky added kindly. "This place can be a little maze-like at night." As they walked side by side down the dimly lit path toward the gate, Emory kept glancing at him. "Sorry if this sounds weird, but, you look really familiar. Like a boy I used to know years ago. He used to come here sometimes with his father. Talked a lot, but had a good heart. Charming little troublemaker." Nicky laughed, genuinely this time. "That sounds about right. You're him." Emory's eyes lit up with recognition. "You're that Nicky?" "The very one," Nicky replied with a grin. "Didn't think you'd remember." Emory suddenly hugged him, before pulling away immediately. "Of course I remember. You had such a spark. And your father, he used to sing to Richard. Had the voice of an angel. He made those somber afternoons feel warm." Nicky's eyes softened. "Thank you. That means more than you know. My father always thought highly of Richard St. Clair. How is he?" "Your father?" Emory asked eagerly. "He's doing well. We live nearby, actually. I think he'd love to see you again." "I'd love that too," Emory said with a bright smile. "It's good to see someone familiar." Nicky gave him a side glance. "Still as warm-hearted as ever, huh? You haven't changed a bit." They reached the front gate, where the moonlight spilled over the gravel. "I'm glad we ran into each other," Emory said, clasping Nicky's hand. "Let's meet again soon." "We will," Nicky promised. "And next time, come by earlier. I'll show you around." With one last wave, Emory turned and walked away into the night. As the distant sound of Emory's footsteps faded into the quiet night, Julian finally stepped out from behind a stone column near the house, his expression tense and unreadable. He approached Nicky, hands in his coat pockets, voice low. "Thanks," Julian said, his eyes narrowing slightly. "For covering for me back there." There was a beat of silence before Julian tilted his head slightly, tone suddenly sharp with something else, something bitter. "But tell me, Nicky, what was so funny? You two were laughing so gleefully. And that hug," his eyes narrowed further. "Was that necessary?" Nicky stared at him, a little incredulous. "Do I sense a bit of jealousy right now?" Julian's jaw tightened. "There can only be jealousy when you like someone and I don't like Emory." With a small sigh, Nicky folded his arms. "He remembered me, Julian. After all these years. Just this talkative kid who used to hang around with his dad. He even remembered how my father used to sing for your father. That's why he hugged me. It felt nice to know that he remembered you even though your group mostly consisted of the high society, but he was different until now. He hasn't changed. He is still the same." Julian looked away, the muscle in his cheek twitching. "Still the same, huh? Emory Montgomery, sweet, thoughtful, all heart." He scoffed, voice hardening. "But don't let that fool you. His warmth and kind words don't erase what his father did to mine. That man's father ruined me, Nicky. My entire family name, smeared into the dirt. I won't let the sun distract me." Nicky's gaze shifted, a bit of the warmth leaving his eyes. "You think he had anything to do with that? He was a kid when all that happened, Julian." Julian turned to him sharply. "I don't care. He's a Montgomery. And I'm going to find out exactly why he's doing all these. If there's anything shady, I'll know." He stepped closer, voice low and cold. "I'm going to tear down the Montgomery name from the inside out. Learn everything. Their weaknesses. Their alliances. And when the time is right," he paused, a flicker of darkness in his eyes. "I'll destroy them." Nicky's eyes lingered on him for a moment, unreadable. "You really think that's the only way?" Julian's face hardened. "Don't get soft on me, Nicky. Remember why we started this. I need you focused. No emotional distractions." "Fine," Nicky said quietly. "What's next?" "I'll be spending more time at the lodge," Julian said, his tone matter-of-fact. "To let Hale think I'm just some lowly overseer. Make him underestimate me. It'll make it easier to slip into their circle." Nicky gave a small nod. "I'll play along." Julian looked at him one last time, his gaze colder than usual. "Good. Don't forget where your loyalty lies." Nicky didn't reply. That night, Emory sat at the edge of his bed, the moonlight pooling across his sheets. The room was quiet except for the faint rustle of the night wind brushing against the old mansion walls. He sighed, about to lie down, when something flickered in his memory. With gentle urgency, he reached into the bottom drawer of the desk beside him and pressed against the back panel until it gave way with a soft click. A secret compartment opened, revealing an old, worn diary bound in cracked leather. He pulled it out carefully, as though touching something sacred. He opened it, flipping past the pages filled with delicate handwriting. Then he paused, resting his hand against a particular page. His shoulders slumped slightly, eyes brimming with emotion. And then, wordlessly, he closed the diary and hugged it tightly to his chest, closing his eyes. "I haven't forgotten," he whispered into the silence. "I'll keep my promise. No matter what it takes." The next morning, Devin Montgomery sat stiffly at the head of the table, sipping black coffee while scanning the day's newspaper. Hale, leaning back in his chair with an almost bored expression, lazily poked at his toast. Everything seemed calm, until the shuffle of soft footsteps drew everyone's attention. Carol glanced up first and froze in place. Her mouth parted slightly as she stared at Emory descending the grand staircase, dressed fully in his monk habit, the long brown robe gently swaying with each step, a wooden rosary hanging from his belt. She blinked rapidly, clearly caught off guard. "Emory," she said, stepping closer, almost as if unsure of what she was seeing. Are you a monk?" Emory gave her a gentle smile, stopping at the bottom of the stairs. "It's a long story, Carol." "A long story indeed," Devon barked from across the room, slamming his cup onto the table. The hot liquid sloshed slightly over the rim. "What in God's name do you think you're doing dressed like that? Are you trying to embarrass this family? Go change out of that outfit right this minute." Emory's eyes narrowed slightly, but he remained calm. "I'm not here to impress anyone, least of all you. If my clothes offend you, Father, feel free to kick me out of the house. I'll stay at the monastery." Devon stood so quickly his chair nearly tipped. "You insolent little—" "I'm not staying," Emory said firmly, brushing past Carol and heading for the door. "You won't have to look at me long enough to be offended." He left and Carol looked between the two men speechless. Hale, however, chuckled softly as he reached for another slice of toast. "Let him go," Hale said, leaning back comfortably. "It's not like he's suddenly grown a halo. Also, I'm heading out today too. Thought I'd have a look around town." Devon shot him a sharp look but merely grunted. "Fine. Just don't cause trouble." The morning air in town was cooler than Emory expected, but it helped calm his nerves as he made his way toward the monastery. He was still bristling from his exchange with his father, though it was nothing he hadn't grown used to over the years. But just as he reached the old iron gates of the churchyard, a familiar voice called out behind him. "Emory." He turned, startled. And there, just across the path, stood Julian, hair curling slightly around his ears and jawline, with a few unruly strands brushing his forehead. His simple clothes, slightly wrinkled, gave him a rugged look that Emory hated to admit, quite affected him. For a split second, he faltered. But he quickly caught himself and straightened. Julian grinned, hands tucked into his coat pockets. "You actually wore the robe. I thought it was a joke when Hale said you were a monk, but wow. Look at you, Brother Emory." Emory exhaled sharply through his nose. "Get out of my way. I don't have time for your mockery." Julian took a step back, hands raised in defense, still grinning. "Easy, Saint Emory. I'm not here to fight." "Then why are you here? Also, I don't understand how you are always everywhere. Are you stalking me?" Emory asked, clearly annoyed. "No way, I was on my way somewhere when I ran into you," Julian answered. "It's great that I found you because I wanted to talk about your project," Julian said, his tone softening. "I've already secured a sponsor, someone willing to fund it." That brought Emory to a pause. His expression shifted, his tone more cautious. "You're serious?" "I am," Julian said, nodding. "I might tease you, but I believe in what you're doing. I am curious to see what happens." Emory's posture eased a little, and he nodded once. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I mean it," Julian added. Then, with a smirk, "Now go ahead, Saint. Go spread the good word." Emory flushed, more from irritation than embarrassment, and quickly turned away. "You're insufferable," he muttered, storming up the parish steps. Julian's laughter followed him. Inside the church, Emory entered the quiet office of the monk head, Father Bernard, a wise-eyed man with a gentle but firm presence. The scent of incense still lingered faintly in the air. Emory sat across from him, removing his hood. "Father, thank you for seeing me. Now that you are here, I hope you will find our monastery convenient." "Thanks, Father, for the concern. Also, I came to speak about a project I'm deeply committed to." Bernard listened intently as Emory explained his vision, creating a shelter for the homeless, with access to free medical care and supplies. A place where the forgotten could be remembered. A space of dignity and compassion. I want to do it in honor of the St. Clair family, Emory said softly. They were important to me. And I think they would have wanted this. Bernard folded his hands, nodding with respect. Your intentions are noble, Emory. And your heart seems sincere. But? The older man's expression turned thoughtful. But the church cannot sponsor this project. Not officially. Not when it stems from such personal motivations. And not while your heart is still entangled. Emory frowned. I don't understand. You've about to devote yourself to the cloth, Bernard said, gently but firmly. But it's clear your ties to the material world, and to a particular family, are still strong. I believe your commitment needs testing. You mean, leave the monastery? Emory asked, disbelief rising in his voice. Only temporarily. Just for a few months, Bernard said. Live among the people again. Experience the world. And when you return, if your heart is still certain, then you'll know your calling. That's also what Father Stephen told me, but, Father Bernard, I am certain of what I want. Bernard offered him a kind smile. Then it won't be hard to prove it. Emory sat back, frustrated, the silence stretching between them. Outside the window, the parish bell began to ring. He looked down at his hands, still clasped tightly together, then slowly nodded. All right. I'll do it. Bernard's eyes twinkled. Good. Then let your actions speak louder than your robe. And for the first time that day, Emory wasn't sure whether the path ahead would sanctify him, or test everything he thought he believed. The tide rolled gently onto the shore, glistening under the afternoon sun as gulls cried overhead and the breeze carried the scent of salt and seaweed. The beach, though not completely deserted, was quiet enough to feel like their own little world. Julian stood barefoot in the sand, the cuffs of his linen trousers rolled up, hair tousled by the wind. Hale arrived moments later, in stark contrast, immaculately dressed in tailored slacks and a light silk shirt, the sleeves pushed up with calculated ease. The moment their eyes met, the playful tension ignited. Hale smirked and walked right into Julian's space, slipping his arms lazily around his neck. Julian grinned, catching Hale's waist and pulling him close. You're late, Julian teased, brushing a lock of Hale's red hair from his face. I'm fashionably late, Hale replied, his tone dripping with amusement. Julian rolled his eyes, but before he could respond, Hale leaned in and kissed him, firm, slow, and possessive. Julian responded eagerly, deepening the kiss as his fingers tangled in the fabric of Hale's shirt. Around them, a few beachgoers stole glances, but neither cared. Hale cupped Julian's jaw, his thumb brushing his cheek as they kissed again, this time longer, more deliberate. They pulled back slightly, foreheads resting together. You know you're the only reason I agreed to touch sand today, Hale murmured. Julian chuckled. You'll survive. Your shoes won't. I took them off. I'm not completely useless. Julian smirked and grabbed his hand. Come on. I want to show you something. They walked along the shoreline until Julian led Hale up a narrow path that wound through a thicket and ended at a modest, weather-worn house perched on a hill. It had a tin roof, chipped paint, and crooked steps that creaked under their weight. This is where you live? He asked, tone incredulous. Julian turned with a shrug. Yeah. Why? Hale looked at the sagging porch and broken windowpane. Julian, this is barely standing. It smells like mildew and fish. Julian laughed, leaning against the doorway. Well, I am a fisherman. Hale didn't move. I'm not going in there. Afraid it'll mess up your expensive clothes? Julian teased, stepping closer. No, I just don't do this, Hale said, crossing his arms. Julian didn't press. He just stepped in front of him, looked into his eyes, and kissed him again, slower this time, softer. His hand slid down Hale's sides, drawing him in. "Come inside," he whispered against his lips. "I'll make you forget the walls." Despite himself, Hale inhaled sharply. The heat between them rose fast. Julian pulled him by the hand, and Hale let himself be led inside. The house was small, just one bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and the barest excuse for a living room. But the shadows worked in Julian's favor. He pushed Hale gently against the wooden wall, kissing him hard. Clothes came off in heated clumsiness, their mouths barely parting. Hale's hand gripped Julian's back while Julian's lips mapped every inch of him with both hunger and reverence, but Hale casually pushed him away and looked around distastefully. "I am sorry, Julian, but I can't do it with you here. Please do not bring me to this dump ever again," he said bluntly, fingers trailing across Julian's bare chest. "This doesn't suit me." Julian glanced at him. "It's not exactly the palace you're used to. It's not even close. You should find some other place." Julian sighed. "I'm not exactly spoiled for options, Hale. I didn't get a rich daddy or private tutors. I fish. That's all I know." Hale studied him for a long beat, then murmured, "Such a shame. You're too pretty for this life." Julian chuckled dryly. "That a compliment or a pity speech?" "Both." Hale smirked, then leaned in closer. "Listen. If you want to continue this, come to my place tonight. Use the side path past the orchard wall. There's a narrow window near the west wing, leads straight to my room." Julian raised a brow. "You planning to sneak me in like some scandalous secret? We could go to a hotel, you know. Does sneaking around turn you on, Mr. Hale Montgomery?" "Maybe, I do love risky ventures," Hale said. "But don't bother about how you will get in. I'll bribe the guards," Hale said with a shrug. "They'll look the other way." He leaned closer, voice low and teasing. "In there, we can truly enjoy each other's company. No splinters." Julian grinned and nodded. "All right, Your Highness. I'll be there." As they walked back toward town, a figure stepped out of a side street. Nicky. He spotted them instantly, saw the closeness between them, the unmistakable signs of intimacy. His eyes flicked briefly to Julian, then landed on Hale. His expression turned flat. Without a word, he brushed past them. Julian opened his mouth to speak, but Nicky had already walked off. Hale smirked. "He doesn't like me." Julian watched Nicky disappear around a corner, then looked back at Hale. "Can you blame him?" Hale just smiled smugly, slipping his hand back into Julian's. "He'll get over it." That night, the Montgomery estate lay quiet under a sky heavy with clouds, the wind gently rustling the hedges lining the massive stone walls. The guards, as promised, didn't so much as glance in Julian's direction as he approached. Their eyes flicked past him, uninterested, already paid to ignore. Julian moved swiftly, his boots soundless against the manicured grass. He reached the grand front entrance but found the doors locked, solid and unmoving. He remembered Hale's words. Clearly, don't bother with the main door. Take the side path. By the orchard wall. Window near the west wing. He followed the path, the night thick with anticipation. Then climbed up, bracing himself against the vine-covered bricks. The window creaked quietly as he pushed it open and slipped inside. The room was bathed in near darkness, lit only by the occasional flash of distant lightning beyond the curtains. Julian stood still for a moment, listening. The air smelled faintly of cedarwood and lavender. He could just make out a figure under the blankets, lying on the bed, still and quiet. A smile tugged at his lips. Without thinking twice, he quietly walked over, toeing off his boots. He knelt onto the bed gently and slid his arms around the blanket-wrapped figure, nuzzling into the warmth. His voice was low, teasing. "Miss me already?" he murmured, pressing soft kisses along the jawline. The figure didn't speak but didn't pull away either. Encouraged, Julian chuckled, "You're quiet tonight, don't tell me you're shy now." He leaned in and kissed the figure deeply, slow, romantic, full of heat, until, without warning, a sharp sting shot through his lips. "Ah, what the hell?" Julian pulled back instantly, hand flying to his mouth. The figure sat up, the blanket falling away. At that exact moment, thunder cracked across the sky, and moonlight filtered in through the parted curtains, casting silver light across the bed. Julian's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't Hale. It was Emory. His wide eyes were filled with the same shock, his lips slightly parted, chest rising and falling rapidly. "Julian?" Emory's voice was barely a whisper, half draped in disbelief, half drenched in confusion. Julian froze. "Emory, what are you doing in this room?" Lightning flashed again, illuminating Julian's panicked face, his lips still tingling from the bite. I thought you were," he couldn't finish. The truth hit him like cold water. Emory was still staring, the weight of the moment settling between them, thick and uncomfortable. Outside, the wind howled and the rain finally began to fall, tapping softly against the glass. And in that moment, under the stormy sky and the flicker of moonlight, something had changed. Thanks for watching. Do like, share and subscribe to the channel for more episodes. The end.